You are listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And right now, I am very fortunate to have my guest on today. You've had him on. We've had him on before. You've heard him before. His name is Bobby Nash. Welcome, Bobby.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me back.
I appreciate it. Actually, I was so excited because you introduced me to my previous guest, Nicole Givens Kurtz, and she was on from 3 to 4. So I'm really happy to have you here with us today. So I appreciate the
Oh,
intro, and that was pretty cool.
thank you. Yes. Nicole's awesome. I've known her for a few years now, and fantastic writer, fantastic friend. I'm glad you guys were able to get on and chat.
Yeah, I think we had a great conversation about diversity in writing, and then just in general, especially with writing. The perspective today with bad writing and people that for example, guys that write bad female characters, they that do the stereotypical stuff or whatever. And Nicole brought up one of the things I thought was neat was she's like, if you're writing about a person of color, don't describe them as like food products. Like her skin was chocolatey or whatever.
Hmm.
So and I thought it was pretty cool. We had a great conversation. So man, I'm so glad to have you on today. I know we had talked about like you coming on kind of like as a semi-regular guest because you've been on here
Hmm.
before, and so yeah, I appreciate you being here today, man. So what's new
Oh,
with
my
you?
pleasure. Just same old, same old. Working. Deadlines wait for no man.
Right, right.
So yeah, no, I'm in the process of finishing up. I've got six projects that have to be done this month. So.
Awesome. Well, Sebastian's in the studio with me today, and he's going to play a little bit for us. So, Bass, you ready? Here is Sebastian Messer, everybody. Thank you, Bass. That was awesome. So, so what's new with you, Bobby?
Um, like I said, just
Six new
keeping busy,
projects?
trying to yeah, always working. It seems like.
Oh man, I know the feeling. I'm actually I started reading your short story for the Devil's Due anthology,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, really good, man. I like it. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. When the idea hit me, it's one of those things when you do especially when you take on a new project or an anthology story where you don't, it's like there's because most anthologies have a theme,
Yeah,
and so when you go in, sometimes you have no idea what to do,
yeah,
and in some cases, like with this particular story, I sometimes will just I'll come up with a character
yep,
and I'll just go, let's see what this character is up to. And a lot of times it starts out as almost like a character study,
yeah,
but then you find the story by following the character. In the without giving away any of the story in this particular one, because it has a Western setting, we talked about how unhappy he is waiting on the stage because the stage is never on time.
right,
And then starting from that point of his irritation and the what he's irritated about, you can go into things about the town, about him, why he's there. And then as you do that, you start to find the story idea. And then sometimes you go back and you can cut a lot of that stuff. Or you can keep it or move it around or whatever, because you don't want to do with a big info dump. You want to
right.
kind of you still want the story to flow, even though you're giving out a lot of information. And so once you find the character and you find what that character is doing, or sometimes that character will just walk you into problems.
Right.
I did a story for an anthology once where I had no idea what to do. So I just created this guy, and this guy's walking down the sidewalk in the middle of the night, smoking a cigarette, and I just follow him until he gets into trouble. And I
Oh,
learn
nice.
about, yeah, and as he gets into trouble, the story started to take on a life of its own, and you end up with a story that works. And it doesn't always work that way, but sometimes it does.
I find that so fascinating with writing fiction too, because when you breathe life into that character, they're gonna tell you, they're gonna
Yeah.
show you, who they are, and
Right, because once you know them, they become real.
yeah,
No, I mean, as a reader, when you read characters, they become real to you as a reader. The same thing happens to us as writers. Those are living, breathing characters in my head that if I have them do something they wouldn't do, they will let me know.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, with so and interesting you say that because I wrote a little 30,000 word novella. And that was a project I was working on last month, and I've been working on the edits of it. And it was so crazy because the way I wrote the outline was from the perspective of, and I'm just gonna say it's a serial murdering, it's a serial murder who murders priests, and it's set like 40 or 50 years in the future, and it's based off of like just issues with the church, and this guy's got a lot of issues with the church. But the outline, I wrote it from the perspective of the serial murderer.
Hmm.
And then when I started writing it, like this other character pops up, Detective Jacob Nash.
Hey, I like that guy.
Yeah.
I like that guy already.
All right. Yeah. I just thought it was a good name because I call him Jake Nash, but like in the book, it's like mostly Nash, like Nash.
Mhm.
But he pops up and it flip flopped the story perspective. So it was instead of being from the serial killer, it's from Nash's perspective where he's trying to catch this guy.
Right.
And this guy seems like he's always, a couple steps ahead of him, always has a bead on where he's at and what he's doing and that kind of thing. And Nash just gets to the breaking point. He just breaks from it. But it's really interesting because when you're talking about like following the guy down the street, smoking a cigarette, it's like, well, what is this guy gonna do?
Hmm.
And I got one day I got really frustrated with the bad guy, and I was like, I just can't stand this guy. I like really don't like him at all. And it was just because like the stuff that came out from writing about him, and I'm like, I don't like this at all.
But that's good. I mean, even if you don't like the character, that means the audience will have some kind of that similar emotional response to the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I'm
yeah,
working on the first draft edits right now, so I've got to get it sent over to Rachel Broom with the Chrome Girls Press. So
it's one of those things I learned, and it's everything I've learned is mostly self-taught. I mean, I have picked up tricks and skills from talking with other writers and
yeah,
whatnot,
yeah,
but most I learned early on that if you trust your gut, a lot of times your subconscious knows more than your conscious brain,
oh yeah,
and you're writing stuff that you don't realize is important at the time,
mm,
or you're dropping clues without realizing you're dropping clues.
yeah, yeah,
And these are things that it all comes from the fact that you know the characters and you trust the characters to get you where they're going.
yeah. Like I
um
didn't, I didn't realize, like there was a plot twist at the end
mhm.
that I had no idea. It was like, oh, that's how this is gonna work. Okay.
Yeah, and then when you go back to plant the clues, you find they're already there
Yeah,
because your characters knew what they were doing a little more than you as the writer had put it all together.
yeah.
And
I think
I
it's
know it
really
sounds
interesting.
weird. It sounds weird to people that are not writers, but
Yeah,
it's totally true that it's just how it works sometimes.
yeah,
I had the novel that my latest novel that came out, Suicide Bomb, it's a thriller about a killer who has found ways to turn people into assassins,
yeah,
and then they kill themselves to kind of cover it up. And there's one bit in there when I was writing it, we had been following the main two characters for a while, and we had spent a little time with the bad guy. And I was like, we need a break. Something needs. We just need a break here. But I didn't know what to do, so I sat down and I started. I just wrote. I created a new character, and I wrote this chapter about this new character. And I was like, I have no idea how he fits, but that's just what my brain told me I needed to do. And I said, if it doesn't work, I can always just pull that chapter out later.
Yeah.
4 chapters later, I figured out how he connected.
Wow.
And it worked. So I was able to leave it in, and I added a couple of little things, but it's because as like it's like building a Lego building. We're still doing this all in layers.
Yeah.
Writing is like painting. You don't slap down all the colors at once. You start with the reds, and then you put the yellows, and we do that with words. With our books, we build. We get the story down, and then we build layers on top of it. So the more
I think good writers do that. I think good writers do that because when you, I feel like when you, this is a simple example, but let's say you go and order a cheeseburger, right? You can get a plain cheeseburger that has cheese and the burger and maybe a couple onions, maybe a pickle and ketchup, standard cheeseburger. But then you go to a different kind of restaurant and you get a cheeseburger that has lettuce and slices of onion and maybe like the long pickles, that you like or whatever. Maybe it's got some avocado on it and has some bacon. And maybe it has, instead of like, American cheese, it might have like, mild Swiss or mild cheddar or something like that. Maybe it has mushrooms. You don't know. But to me, that's the difference between writing and good writing is the good writing has like the extra goodies to it. And, like it has like the little nuances that okay writing doesn't.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's you learn these bits that you can add to it that makes it better. And sorry, I was being
Oh no,
distracted.
you're fine. That's how it works. That's life, guys. This is live action, everybody. So
that's my writing day in a nutshell. I'm in the middle of something, my door opens.
oh gosh.
And, but and I'm sitting here waving them back out, and they come on in anyway. So,
It's
but
okay.
yeah, so there you go. This is why there are no reality shows about writers, because our lives, that's the most exciting thing that happens in my day.
Yeah.
Someone comes in and distracts me.
Let's talk about that. Let me do a station ID real quick. You're listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. My special guest today is Bobby Nash, and we're kind of digging into like the writer's life. So that is, I think that's a great topic, Bobby, as the idea of what a writer's life is like is probably completely opposite to what it really is like, I think.
Well, we talk so much about how the characters feel real to us and all that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that we think that way is because we're alone all the time. I sit here in my office. My office is a small room in the downstairs, filled with books and DVDs and assorted junk and toys and tchotchkes and whatever I've picked up over the years. It looks like a 10-year-old lives in here, but that's my office. I'm surrounded by creative things, but I sit in here all day long by myself, staring at a laptop, sometimes with music playing, sometimes not. But it's just me. And if I lived alone, there wouldn't get as many interruptions. But I take care of my dad. My dad has had some medical issues, so I take care of him. So I live in the same house with him, and my brother's across the hall. So there's 2 other people in the house who they don't understand, because they're not exactly creative people. They don't understand that I can't turn it on and off like a faucet.
Right.
And so
Yeah,
even though
I get
I've
ideas at all kinds of situations and times of the day. I mean, like
yeah.
there's no set time that it's going to happen for
Well,
me.
I've repeatedly go just if you need to ask something, that's fine. But if it's something that can wait, let it wait. Because when you interrupt me, I stop. It's a
Right.
hard stop, and it sometimes takes a little while to get going again.
That
So it's like,
I
but
saw something one time talking about that. I read an article one time that it was talking about like interruptions. If you're like on, if you're thinking about something and you're working on something, that interruption can make you spend 15 to 20 minutes just to try to get back in the same pattern. And sometimes you never catch that again. Like,
right, because you can get in the zone. I mean, you just
yeah,
kind of you get so into what you're doing, the words are flowing. It's
yeah,
just, I mean, you're on fire. It's just coming out of you like crazy. And someone opens the door and says, "Hey, you got a second?" And it's like you hit a brick wall, and you get kicked out of the zone, and you're like, "Sure, yeah, what you need?" You answer the
yeah,
question, and you sit back down and you go, "What are words? Hmm."
yeah.
So I mean, it really is. It can be a hard break, and you lose that momentum
Yeah, see,
sometimes.
for me, I do electrical work during the day, and I leave the house about 5:30 in the morning. I don't get home until after 6:30 a lot of times, and so I have been actually taking a break from writing. I've been working on editing,
Hmm.
which is writing, but I've been working mostly on reading and editing, and but for me, coming home during the week is, like what I want to write. I usually have to wait until everybody's gone to bed, whatever, when it works for me. And the same kind of reasons, because of distractions or, I don't, I want to spend time with my family and all. And I don't want to, neglect them like that. But most of the time I'm off on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Not always, but it seems like I always have stuff I have to do. And, it's like, okay, well, and I made a joke last week or whatever. If I could write as fast as I can type, I would have a novel out every week
Hmm.
because of the time that I can spend on writing. But it doesn't work like that.
Right. Well, and there's so much more to writing than just writing.
Yeah,
I
it's not
mean, at
typing.
the,
It's
right
creating a story.
at the end of the day, I mean, the number of words you put down on your novel or your short story or whatever, those are the things that count.
That's a
But
metric I can count. That's it. Yeah,
right,
really. That's when I
but
would share the number count. It's just so I could say I actually did some work today.
right, and it's a good way to like kind of do your it's a good way to measure your productivity. It certainly at the end of the day doesn't mean anything because
Yeah. Sorry.
in the job we're doing, our readers only care about what the finished book reads like.
Yeah. Yep.
And but it is a good way for people to track their own output. If your goal is to do 1,000 words a day, it's a good way for you to track it.
Well, for example, my goal was to write the 30,000 words in a month. So last
Hmm.
year I did that NaNoWriMo, did the 50,000 in a month. That was, I felt like that was a little bit too much for me with my schedule. But I
Well,
thought,
that's
okay,
that's 1,000 words a day with no breaks,
yeah. And that is like every day of the week,
and that really is not possible
which it comes
because
out to
because
about 3 or 4 pages, I guess,
yeah,
per day.
but because you're gonna run into days where you're tired
Yep.
or you're just not feeling it
Yeah, like today, I feel
or
like that, and I've got to write a couple articles after I'm done with this. I have to, belt out about 1,000 words just in articles, and I'm tired.
yeah. Yeah, and if your goal is to say I'm going to do that 30,000 in 30 days, and you miss a day, that means you got to do 2,000 the next day,
Right.
which can add stress to you. So word counts, tracking your word counts, and aiming for one is not a bad goal, but you also have to allow yourself to fail at it sometimes.
Yeah, like there were a bunch of times where I didn't hit 1,000 words, and like one day I hit like I think 100 plus words or so, and that was
Right,
because I forced myself to write 100 plus words. I was like, I've got to have something today,
right,
But I feel like working towards a story is a more important thing,
right, because deadlines are important now, and if you're doing it yourself. and you're going to publish it yourself, you still need to give yourself deadlines, I think. Otherwise, you don't. I work better knowing I got to get it done here.
Yeah, yeah.
But still, things get in the way. I am so far behind on getting the next snow book out, and it's all my fault. And it's all, I mean, there's other reasons, but things get pushed back. So I've had to adjust my deadline a couple of times, but I can do that. Where I work for other publishers, those are the deadlines I absolutely need to hit
Oh
or try
yeah,
to hit.
yeah. Well,
Right.
like with the Devil's Due anthology, right? So you made the deadline on that one, and like half the authors did and half didn't.
Yep.
And I, because I wanted to work with those authors still, I mean, life happens. I totally understand life happens, and but I had built in enough cushion, enough time because when I wanted to publish, I built in enough time to be able to adjust for that. Just kind of assuming that some people would not make the deadline, hoping that they would, but just
So
assuming that some people
yeah,
wouldn't, especially
some of
when.
the some of the best editors and publishers I've worked with, they build in a 2 week. They really put the deadline 2 weeks before they really need it.
I did a month.
Okay, yeah, because that way you've got that.
Yeah, because I put it March the 1st, and I really needed it by like April the 1st,
Hmm.
because I want to put it out May the 26th, and that gives me a solid, you know, 6 weeks or so that I can work on the formatting and just fine tooth going through it and all that. And then Allie Leisure Hurt's going to be she's also going to be helping me with the executive editing part.
Cool.
So I'm going to be doing the frontline editing, but especially working with like 10 different authors.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because last hour I was talking with Nicole, and we talked a lot about like diversity and bringing other kind of stories to the table, and talking about that. And I was asking her, I was like, if I'm writing, from a different perspective, like a different culture perspective, what's something I could do? How could I do that? And she was talking about researching, and then talking with folks, from that culture or whatever, and trying to make sure that I don't do something that would be like against their culture, or something that they would normally like, something that would be like sacrilegious or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, because of listening to her perspective, and talking about that. And I feel like when you're, because like the group of people that I have for this anthology, I feel like are pretty representative of other voices. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's going to be a good combination of that with the anthology. But I feel like it's also, working with, when you have different people and different personalities and you're working with them, setting the deadline it's critical in business. You have to have deadlines. You have to get things done a certain thing, certain time frames for every business that you do. And in writing, um, I set deadlines for myself for my stuff that I'm doing. Like the one that I was talking about that I wrote, that's actually for Chrome Girls Press. So, I have a loose deadline on that one, but my goal was to have the first draft written by March the 1st.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of like for me, just kind of coming into this, I'm still really new with fiction writing, um, trying to use those, uh, I guess, tactics or management structures that work in business for me, trying to use that for this as well, because I know that they work, but then having to adapt it to writing and adapt it to book publishing, because it's a whole new business for me. Self-publishing is totally different than working on an anthology in different ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I have to not only get my stuff done, but then I have to work with the different authors, and then there's like another layer of like having to do contracts and the payments and that kind of thing. And so I've been kind of working my way through all of those things, and then on top of that, like there's also the advertising and the social media and all that stuff. And
Hmm.
you had made a post about like wait till they get to marketing. I remember you shared something like that.
Oh yeah, I saw that one the other day. It was a meme where the guys were laughing. It was the guys from Casino, and that was out there laughing, and
It was
it's
great.
like It's like, you think writing a book's hard.
Yeah.
Wait till you get the marketing.
Yeah, yeah. And I had coffee with a friend the other day, Jason Usry, and we were talking about, the audience, reaching more people with the audience, and listeners and that kind of stuff. And same thing with readers. The audience, whatever you're putting out there, if it's some form of entertainment, your audience is king. And I thought about that. I was like, marketing. It is. It's like, how do you budget that? Because right now you put a new book out there and it's like, ding, there it is. And then you hope that your diehards, pick it up and want to read it. And then you hope that you reach, maybe some new audiences, or people that might be interested in it. And how do you fight that? How do you combat, being able to, go through that over and over again? Because you still advertise Evil Ways.
I have to, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in an age where, as an indie creator,
Yep.
we're in an age where it's really easy to get your work out there. It's much easier than it's ever been.
Yeah.
The the downside is there's so much out there.
Yeah.
The signal to noise ratio is really just, it's way out of whack. And so when you put that new book out there, you are a drop in a big ocean. And our job as the writers or the publisher, or whichever, is to get people to see that one drop. And it's tough because, like I said, there's a lot of noise that you have to get through. But and it's also, there's a difference, with an indie, like if you were a big publisher, big publishers promote to the middleman who's going to sell it to the reader.
Yeah.
We as indies don't necessarily have that middleman. So we're trying to promote directly to readers.
Yeah.
It can be, for the readers, sensory overload.
Oh yeah.
When 1,000 writers are going, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, So we have to come up with ways to get people interested in our books that's not us hard selling it. Because I've discovered that when you're trying to hard sell something, you turn people off.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
I've noticed too is like, for example, with my last Blood Thrasher book, I had so many people like, oh, I want to read it, I want to read it. And I think when I released it was a bad time. And I really didn't have that many people that loved the first one wanted to read the second one. And it was, I released it right before Christmas.
Well, there's also the thing that we assume that if they bought book one and they liked it, they're going to be on the lookout for book two.
Well, I'm talking about that. That is true. But I'm talking about people that told me that they wanted to read the second one.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
I've discovered that that's really not true. You've got to, they want it to be as easy as, like, here's the book, click this, it takes you right to it.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with ways as an indie creator how to get out and find those readers. And social media is a good start, but again, more noise, you're still a drop in an ocean. But social media is a good place to start. But there's more that you can do. You don't want to just do all the buy my book things. I do posts on my writing day.
Yeah.
I do teases. You can do a cover reveal is promoting a book that's not out yet, but getting people interested in it. Talking about, the character, talking about your research. Those kind of things can drum up interest before a book out. But we're getting the books out in as many formats as possible. For the books that I publish through Ben Books, my imprint, I make sure they're in paperback, they're in ebook,
and hardback too.
And we do hardbacks. I'm a little behind on getting my hardbacks out, but we do hardbacks.
Let me do the station ID. I can't believe it's already 4:30, Bobby. This is crazy. All right, everybody, hold on one second. We're gonna do these station IDs, and we'll be right back.
WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by listeners like you and by the 2020 Savannah Music Festival, presenting Americana artists Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, Mandolin Orange, Balsamic Range and Third Time Out, Sarah Giroux and Madison Cunningham, Leo Kotke, Amethyst Kia, Bruce Hornsby and the Noisemakers, and more. Additional information can be found at savannahmusicfestival.org.
This is WRU.
This is Sebastian Messer playing on his guitar. Thank you, Bass. And you're listening to The Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer. My special guest today is Bobby Nash. And Bobby, we were talking right before the break, we were talking about getting that signal boost and that attention for, really connecting with the reader, and one of the things I've seen too, and man, we've talked about this before, but the shovels and jeans, the programs that are out there that they sell you on the idea of like, okay, well, these are the skills that you need to do this and to do that. And there are some really good ones out there, like Craig Martell. He has a whole series of books about indie publishing. Mark Dawson has actually like a training thing about advertising for authors. I'm doing one right now with Jessica Brody. She has a program where, it's talking about, writing and with the storytelling aspect of it. So you have done a lot over the years with conventions and appearances, and you do like a lot of interviews and things like that. So what's worked for you, and then what's something maybe like you found was kind of a pitfall that didn't work that you thought was going to work?
Well, I mean, I try all kinds of things, like you said, because you never know what's going to work. I do a lot of interviews. I do notice I think the interviews help promote the brand, the Bobby Nash brand, as I guess is a good way to put it. I don't necessarily see sales upticks from doing interviews, but I do get a lot of feedback from people who listened to the interviews or read the interviews. But I don't necessarily see an uptick in sales. Sometimes I do, but not always.
And you've been a blessing for me too, because you've introduced me to a lot of different people. Like Nicole Givens Kurtz today, and Rachel Brune. She's been like one of my favorite people that you've introduced me to. And I believe Randy Bishop was the one that introduced us.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so shout out to you, Randy, if you're listening.
It is this industry, this creative industry that we're in, especially on the indie side, or not even just the indie side. That's narrowing it too far, I think. Just in general, because I know people that I've met doing conventions, doing interviews, doing podcasts, being on panels, et cetera, just groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
I've gotten to meet people that not only, are they cool people in the industry, but they've become friends. You make friends and you network. And,
like we met way before I had a radio show.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's like, being friends with you, I didn't become friends with you because one day you might have an anthology and hire me for it. That's not why you do it. But it's, because some people ask, is that why you make friends with people so they'll hire you? And I was like, no.
That's so weird because, I'm a relationship-based person, not transactional-based person. And I think that people would ask that kind of question, they're more transactional-based.
Yeah.
And they have this disillusion that writing that you're going to automatically, when you put a book out there, that people are going to automatically buy it and you're going to be a bestseller and you're going to make tons of money.
And
And
I've
it's
met
like,
a lot of
no.
people I've met a lot of people that absolutely think that's the case. And I do blame I do blame TV and movies for that a little bit, because if you think about it, if you ever see an author in a TV show
They're
or a
always
movie,
famous
they're
and rich.
generally
And
rich.
yeah,
And they've got time to solve crimes,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. And that's just not the reality. The reality is I'm like, every book I sell, it feels like I'm hand selling it,
yeah, yeah,
and which is cool. And that's not a complaint. I'm glad that I've learned the skills to get out there and promote, because I meet a lot of people that like, I don't know how to do that. You know,
yeah. Well,
and
you're really good with your presentation too. Like you have, like, for example, the way that you set your table up, it
mhm.
has all the stuff there, but you talk with people. And I've done events and events and events. And, one of the things that I tell folks with that is people don't buy your product, they buy you. And if you're not approachable, whether it's at an event or online or whatever, uh,
Mhm.
why would you expect somebody? I mean, like, I'm not going to buy something from somebody that I don't know, you
the
know?
the They're fairly early, because I started doing cons really early, because I started out in comics. I was doing comics first.
Right.
I was doing conventions, and I had my books out. And I used to, in the early days, I would go into a con and going, okay, this convention, I paid $50 for the table, gas, food. I've got to make this much money for this show to be successful.
Right.
And that would be the only thing I'm thinking about, is selling books.
Right.
And I would be miserable when I come home, especially if I didn't cover my costs.
Let me interject something. Like, I saw Carol had posted about a uh, a convention. I don't want to name the names, okay, but they wanted $700 for the table space, and I was
Right.
like, really? I mean, $700. Like, folks, do you understand how many books you have to sell to make $700 in one day?
That doesn't matter, though, because there are people willing to pay it.
That's true.
There,
That's
there are
true.
people, and we're just looking, and also we're kind of looking at it from the writer standpoint. For an artist standpoint, the price point may be different, because at $10 a print, that, or $100 for an original, they may be okay. I
Right.
have a friend who's a very popular, very uh, well-known artist, and he does original hand-drawn, one-of-a-kind pieces of art, and takes them to cons with him, that he sells for like $300 a piece.
Yeah.
For him, that's 4 paintings and he's covered.
Yep.
Or 4 pieces of art, he's covered. I have a painter the same way. So everybody's a little different. Plus, there are people that are early in their career that are like, I got to get in front of people, whatever it takes. If I lose money, I've still got to get in front of people.
Yeah.
So that might be willing to pay those higher prices to get their work seen. So I get why. Yeah, I don't do shows that cost that much, because I've been doing this a long time, and I just can't losing money year after year after year on that is not a good business model.
Yeah, we talked about that the last time, and
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I feel like I agree with you, because I was talking the other day with Jason. When I used to do photography, I would make pretty decent money being a photographer, and I enjoyed it. But I got to where I wanted to move on from it. Writing, I've never really made any money with writing. I make money. I get paid for freelancing for the newspaper, but with my own books, I haven't really sold a lot of books.
Yeah.
Um, I've done my own conventions. I've held my own conventions, and the first two were kind of like, I know the second one, like the second year, was definitely like a fizz. So it was like, this is, there were only like 30 people outside of the authors and their plus ones that came. But last year with the Savannah Author Expo, did it over here with Savannah Coffee Roasters,
Right.
and it was a smaller venue, but we had 50 people come out, from walk-in traffic and then Eventbrite stuff or whatever. And it was a much better turnout, much better, event. And so it's been like a juggling act, like for me, because I have not done, and I'm not going to do any of the local comic book conventions. I'm just not really interested in that. And then as far as the other like book conventions or whatever, we have the Savannah Book Festival, but they don't host any indie authors.
Right.
So that's not really an option for me. So I have my Savannah Authors thing, and then we do the Books and Brews or whatever. But the Books and Brews is more of a fundraiser and not a book selling event. So it's like this is a way you could put your books out there and get to talk to folks or whatever. But yeah, doing events, it's a hard road. I feel like it's trying to get
Well,
out there.
yeah. Well, like I said, I had this great epiphany fairly early on that was like, stop worrying about the money. If
Yeah,
you make the money, that's awesome.
yeah,
Especially at that time, I was working a full time job. I was, wasn't hurting. It's like, so I started treating conventions and events and things like that
like
like a
marketing.
part of my marketing.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I look at them. I look at like when
I,
I do
uh,
that. It's a marketing thing, and you have to get out there in front of people. You have to talk to people, and especially not just the anybody and everybody, but kind of drilling down to your readers.
yeah. Well, and there's also anybody that's been to a convention knows how easy it is to run out of money.
Oh yeah,
And I get it. I am not the first stop. I am somebody they generally find by accident while they're walking around.
they're
You
meandering
know,
around.
well, if you
Yeah,
think about it, I mean,
I know the feeling.
in all honesty, I mean, people go to cons. The celebrities are usually the first stop.
Oh
And
yeah,
that can be $300 right there, getting a photograph and a something
and an
signed.
autograph or a selfie. Yeah, yeah,
Right. So people that's generally they're the bigger draw, and then people go down to the more famous authors, the famous artists, and so then you start whittling down to where I am. They're like, man, I'd love to buy a book, but I'm out of money, and I'm like, great. Here's a card. There's links on my website. They're available in ebook, paperback, hardcover, audiobook at Amazon, at Barnes and Noble, et cetera, et cetera. They get all that information. They can look through the books here, and go, ooh, I like this. And I'm like, well, here, let me give you a card. And, you know, and I do see Friday, the next Friday when somebody got paid again,
a little
Amazon
boost.
gets, oh, I sold some books on Amazon today.
Yeah,
It was probably people I met at the con.
yeah.
So you, so stopping worrying about, okay, they're not buying anything, I don't care. That's not the way to do it. You treat, everybody that comes to my table, I try to treat them like they are the most important people in the room at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
relationship based.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's one of those things I learned from watching other people at conventions,
I
and
give you an example. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was like, I kind of patterned it. I patterned how I react with people, how I treat people, and how I saw some other guests treating people.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, George Perez was the first one. I was like, you know what? That's a guy to watch. Let's see how he does things.
yeah.
Because he's well known. He's a famous writer and artist. He always has a huge line, but he treats everybody that comes by his table, like a long lost friend.
That's awesome.
He is incredibly nice to everyone. So that was one. The other one that really got me with the whole treating them like they're the most important person in the room was when I met Avery Brooks, who was on Deep Space Nine and Spencer for Hire. And I met him at a convention, and he talked to me like I was the most important person in the room. Now, because a lot of times you meet the celebrities, they want your name, you sign it, but
Right.
he was asking me, because he saw I had like a guest badge on. He's like, "Oh, what do you do?" And so he was like asking me, So it was a very eye-opening experience of the guest fan relationship. And I've seen other people that I've picked up, do's and don'ts from. And
Let me do the station ID. I want to share one with you too. You're listening to the Adam Messer Show here on WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I'm your host, Adam Messer. My special guest today is Bobby Nash, and we're talking about just working your books and, just trying to focus on relationships when you're out there, talking to folks about your work. Last Friday, Bobby, I got to go to a local elementary school, And I don't know if you remember a couple years back, I posted about Bill the Long Necked Dragon story,
Mm-hmm.
like the one that I wrote and illustrated.
Right, right.
Well, anyway, I get to go out to Guyton Elementary. I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Jordan and her kids out there. We had such a great time. It was so much fun. And I read the story to the kids, and it's a coloring book. And so the kids all could color, and they were all coloring and whatever. And there was this one kid. There's like 28 kids in this room. There was this one kid. He said, "I want your autograph, Mr. Adam. I want your autograph." And I was like, I hadn't thought about that. Had thought about doing an autograph. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And then all of the other kids wanted an autograph. And then they lined up. And I was like, man, it just made my day. It was so cool that these kids, wanted my autograph, and they liked the story, and they were showing me their coloring, and they were showing me all this, and I was like, I felt so honored, and so it was just such a special feeling to talk with these kids, about writing and all that. And I told Mrs. Jordan, I said, this is the most anybody's ever asked me to autograph anything. I mean,
and
so
their excitement.
Yeah, they just it is so genuine, because they're not going to pretend like, oh, I like it, and if they don't like it,
Right.
And it was a really good, and it's so weird, but I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and whenever I do the poetry or the children's stuff, I get a really good reception with that. I get a lot of feedback from people, and they enjoy it and that kind of thing, and the kids love it. And then, when I do my sci-fi or my horror stuff, it's like, I don't even want to call it lukewarm. I just want to say it's cold. I get a couple of diehard people, but otherwise it's pretty, like a pretty cold reception. And, so my friend was like, if you're, and I love doing the stuff with the kids, and I love doing the poetry, but I really like the other kind of writing. I really love the other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I do a convention. It's just a 1-day show here. It's in my area. It's at a high school.
Yeah.
And part of the convention is during the school hours, where they bring in kids from, and it's the high school, so they're teenagers.
Right.
They're coming in as part of the English class, and so they're bringing kids in for this an hour at a time. And I remember the biggest thing was how many of them who were like writing and drawing their own comics, how a lot of us did as kids.
Yeah.
And that they were surprised by the fact that, wait, there are people that are doing this for a living?
Yeah.
Because their teachers were like pointing out, like they're making this is their jobs. And that, because as a kid, I didn't know that either. It was like, I know comics got made, but.
Well, back then, there really weren't a lot of channels to indie publish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I was born in 76. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and, there were not a lot of ways that you could publish. I mean, like, literally, this self-publishing stuff, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but this self-publishing stuff, I think, is with, advent of social media and web comics and, Amazon, like when we were kids, it was like, if you couldn't write for Marvel or DC or, maybe Image or something like that,
Yeah,
so,
your options were very limited.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things where, like I said, we're in a great time if you're creative.
Even podcasts. I mean, there was no such thing as a podcast back then. There was no internet.
Yeah, there are so many easy is not the right word. There are so many ways to get your work out there as a creative. And, man, because, not to sound like the old guy here, but it's like, man, I wish I had some of these things around. Like, if the internet had been around when I was a kid,
Yeah.
Or if print on demand, I mean, even when I started getting published in the late 90s, early 2000s, doing it yourself, doing it as print on demand was looked down on.
Oh, yeah.
Even, I mean,
stigma.
less than 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it was, because if you were doing it yourself, then you're obviously not good enough to really get hired by a real publisher. And that was how people thought.
Oh yeah,
And that
people still think that way.
there are some, yeah, but it is shifting, to where it is acceptable. I don't get asked as much. I used to, but I don't. Like I used to get asked at cons, people would come up to my table and they'd pick up a book and they go, "Did you self-publish this?" And if you said yes, they put it back down.
It's so crazy you say that because I remember locally here we had like GnomeCon,
Mm-hmm.
and still again it was like Amazon self-publishing was still pretty new, 2014. I think it's been around like I don't know, like maybe like 10 years now or something like that, or close to 10 years. But I just remember like I met Winfield Strock. I think you met him at the Quill,
Mm-hmm.
and Win was published through I think it was called Rebel Press Inc. or something like that. It was a small publishing house, and I was talking to him and I was like, oh, that's so cool, and that they were doing that, and that he was a published author with them and whatever. And I started learning. I was like, okay, well, so this is, something I could do. This is something I could put together, and I could make my own publishing thing. And, like 2 years later is when I came up with the idea with the Savannah Quill. But you remember the first year or so, like we had those little articles and a little e-magazine and stuff. And,
Yep. Oh,
and it was just kind of like a baby idea. And then, fast forward, 6 years later, you're doing the Valhalla Press imprint. That's me. I'm doing it, but I'm I'm trying to
well,
make it as professional as possible, and that's thanks to being able to do stuff with the indie stuff,
yeah.
right?
I when I started Ben Books,
And
all
I
that
love
was
your
just
Ben Book stuff, by the way.
thank you. I started Ben Books. The reason I started Ben Books was Evil Ways had been at a publisher and it was a terrible publisher.
Oh
It
wow,
was just a horrible experience. And when my rights reverted back to me, I had tried to shop it around and it was just nothing was working.
right?
So I was like, I'll just put it out myself. So I didn't want to just put it out. I wanted to make it look, give it a company name and make
Yeah,
it
yeah,
professional. Like I don't hide the fact that Ben Books is my, self-publishing imprint or my indie imprint. But unless people ask, a lot of times people don't know because they just look at it and go, "Oh, Ben Books, okay."
yep,
You know, people that know me, they look at it and go, "Ben Books, oh, I get it."
yeah, yeah,
My initials are BEN, so Ben
right.
Books, yeah. Um, and it's just one of those, So
Well, that's exactly why I did the Valhalla books with its own imprint, because I wanted to separate the Savannah Quill, which has been typically, you know, uh, fundraiser events and things like that. Um, I wanted for the first book
mhm.
to be to have like a book imprint, and have a name, and I wanted to be able to separate, like, okay, here's the retail side of what I've been doing with my authorship from the fundraiser side of stuff. And I also wanted something that would be easy to remember and that people, could identify with and enjoy, and the whole thing is that what I want to do with Valhalla Books is to offer compelling stories so that readers love, or so that people love reading again. And I feel like with the group of authors that we have, the stories, like the stories I've read so far are awesome. And that's what it's all about. It's like having those, those connections, and offering, stories that people want to read, the little page turners.
Absolutely.
So we got like about a minute left here, Bobby. Where can people check out your stuff?
Okay. Well, I have a website. It's bobbynash.com. Ben Books also has a website, which is ben-books.com. And my snow series, because it's seems to be fairly popular, I created a website for the snow series at abrahamsnow.com, or you can get links from either site. And I'm all over the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I got one of them, all of them, I think.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I'm feel free to friend me or connect with me on any of those. And yeah, I'm everywhere, and I try to post. I post stuff daily. I also do Patreon as a little patron of the arts, fundraising thing. I do for the $5 and up a month, you get like an ebook a month plus the
Well,
other stuff. And I do
I'm really happy to have you as part of the Valhalla Books as one of our inaugural authors for The Devil's Due. And anybody wants to check that out, you can go to valhallabooks.com. I'm still working on the website. I'm actually going to have your photo and bio on there, Bobby, when I get everything together as one of the authors. So check out Bobby Nash and check out his stuff. I think you like it. I like your work, so I appreciate you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for being on the show. Up next, guys, is the Savannah at Night crew. All right, Bobby, have a great day, man.
Thanks, Matt.